Nobody in the Stone Age ever went to the gym, not once, and yet the average human 20,000 years ago had denser bones, stronger legs, and cleaner arteries than almost anyone alive today. Here is the strange part. They were not trying. There was no word for exercise. There was no plan. Nobody woke up in a cave and decided that today was leg day. So how did they end up in better shape than you? Without a single rep. Start with the word itself. Exercise comes from a Latin root that meant to drive, to keep in motion, to work a thing until it holds its shape. The same root gave Rome the word for its army. That tells you something. For most of human history, moving your body was not a hobby. It was the tax you paid to be alive. Think about what your ancestors actually had to do to eat. Not order, not drive, not open a door. Walk, dig, carry, climb, chase, butcher, haul it home. Food did not come to them. They went to the food every single day. And if they stopped going, they stopped eating. We can actually measure this because a few groups of people still live this way right now. In northern Tanzania, there are people who still hunt with bows they make themselves and dig wild tubers out of sun, baked ground with sharpened sticks. The men cover somewhere between 8 and 12 kilometers on an ordinary day. The women cover a little less but carry far more, often with a child on their back and 20 kilos of roots slung across their chest. They average around 2 hours of moderate to vigorous activity every single day. 2 hours, not 2 hours a week. 2 hours a day, from childhood until they die. Now here's the number that should stop you. Public health guidelines in most wealthy countries recommend about 150 minutes of moderate activity per week. Those hunter-gatherers hit that in a day and a half, and the average person in a rich country does not even reach the weekly number. Further south, in the Bolivian Amazon, there is a group who farm a little and hunt and fish for the rest. Portable heart scanners were carried into the rainforest to look directly inside their chests. What came back rewrote a textbook. Their arteries were the cleanest ever measured in any human population on Earth. An 80-year-old there had blood vessels comparable to an American in their mid-50s. 9 out of 10 had essentially no plaque at all. They eat plenty of carbohydrates. Many of them smoke. They carry parasites and chronic infections that would put you in a hospital ward. And their hearts are still in better condition than yours. So what are they doing that you are not? They are moving around 17,000 steps a day, and they almost never sit in a chair. Your skeleton keeps a record of all of this. Bone is not a dead scaffold you carry around inside you. It is living tissue that thickens exactly where you load it, and quietly dissolves where you do not, which means every bone is a diary of how a body was used. And when you read the bones of ancient humans, the entries are brutal. Neanderthal arm bones show a wall thickness you now only find in professional athletes. Their shoulder joints show wear consistent with repeated heavy thrusting. Their leg bones are built like the legs of a modern mountain runner. That is not one exceptional individual. That is the average one. The one that really lands is what happened when the arm bones of early farming women were compared against women alive today. Not just against ordinary women, against university footballers, against elite competitive rowers who train 20 hours a week and whose upper bodies are the whole point of their sport. The Neolithic women beat all of them, with arm bone strength running up to about 16% above the elite rowers. And those women were not athletes. They were kneeling at a stone grinding slab, pushing grain back and forth by hand, for hours a day, every day. From the moment they were tall enough to reach it, ask yourself what your bones would say about you. But raw strength is only half the story, because the human body was never really built for strength. Compared to a chimpanzee, you are pitiful. A chimp your own size would take you apart without effort and barely raise its heart rate doing it. What you have instead is stranger and rarer. You are built to keep going. Look at what you are carrying around. A springy arch in your foot that compresses and rebounds with every stride, returning energy for free, a long elastic tendon running from your heel up into your calf, a ligament at the back of your skull whose only real job is to stop your head from bobbing when you run, a gluteus maximus so oversized that it is by a wide margin the largest muscle in your body, and it barely fires at all when you walk. It comes alive when you run. None of that is for lifting. All of it is for distance. And then there's your skin. You have somewhere between 2 and 4 million sweat glands, spread across a body that lost nearly all of its fur. No other large mammal cools itself this way. A deer, a horse, an antelope, they all cool by panting. And an animal cannot pant properly while it is galloping. So on a hot afternoon, a human can do something almost nothing else on this planet can do. Chase an animal until its own body overheats, and it simply stops. It takes hours. The animal sprints away and vanishes. You jog after it at a pace that looks almost lazy. It sprints again, shorter this time. It stops in a patch of shade to pant, and you appear on the horizon before it has finished cooling. It runs again, shorter, then it staggers. Its core temperature climbs past what its brain can tolerate, and it stands there trembling in the open while a thin, hairless, sweating animal walks calmly up to it. No weapon required. Groups in southern Africa were still hunting exactly like this within living memory. That is your inheritance, not a bench press. An 8-hour walk in the heat that ends with a kill. So by now, you probably picture the ancient world as relentless, constant grinding labor from sunrise until collapse. And this is where the whole thing flips. Because those same hunter-gatherers rest more than you do. Measure it properly, and it comes out around 9 to 10 hours of the waking day spent not doing very much at all. Sitting, talking, making things, dozing, tending a fire, arguing, laughing at each other. They are not on a treadmill. They are not counting anything. They have enormous stretches of the day where they do nothing. So why does all that rest not wreck them the way it wrecks us? Because of how they rest. They almost never use a chair. They squat with their heels flat on the ground. They kneel. They sit on the earth with their legs folded or stretched out in front of them. In every one of those positions, the muscles of the legs and the trunk are still quietly working. Blood is still being pumped back up out of the legs. The hips still travel through their full range every time they get up. Sitting in a chair is the only resting position humans have ever invented where the entire lower body switches off, and you spend most of your life in one. That is the real difference. It is not that they trained harder. It is that they never fully stopped. Their day had no zero. There is something else worth noticing about the shape of their activity. It is never the same movement twice. One day is digging. The next is a long walk to a new patch. The next is climbing a tree for honey and hanging by one arm while smoke pours out of a hollow. The next is carrying a child 8 kilometers. The load is constantly varied, constantly interrupted, and almost never repetitive. And their children are not exempt. They are not sitting anywhere. Hunter-gatherer kids climb, wrestle, run in short bursts, throw things, and carry younger siblings. For most of their waking hours, nobody organizes it. Nobody calls it training. It is play, and it builds a skeleton, which brings us to the moment it all changed. Farming did not make people healthier. When humans settled down and started planting, average height dropped, teeth rotted for the first time at scale. Joints wore out in patterns you can still read in the bones, because now the work was the same motion, all day, for a lifetime, grinding, hoeing, hauling water along the same path to the same door. The body was still moving, but it had stopped being varied. It had become a job. And then something happens that had never happened before in the history of our species. A small number of people stop having to use their bodies at all. Priests, scribes, landowners, officials, soldiers between campaigns. And within a few generations of that, humans invent the gym. Around 2,500 years ago, the Greeks build the first purpose. Built training grounds, open colonnaded courtyards with running tracks, sand wrestling pits, and lifting stones carved with handles. The name comes from their word for naked, because that is how they trained. Read that again. The gymnasium is not ancient in the way the human body is ancient. It appears at almost exactly the moment daily life stopped demanding enough movement on its own. The gym is not a tradition. It is a patch. Rome took the same idea and turned it into doctrine. A legionary was expected to march about 30 kilometers in 5 hours carrying armor, shield, stakes, tools, and rations, sometimes 45 kilos of it. and then dig and build a fortified camp at the end of the day. Twice a month, they did that same march faster. Their training manuals were explicit about the method. Recruits drilled against a wooden post using a practice sword and shield made deliberately double weight, so that the real ones would feel light in their hands. Deliberate overload, progressive resistance 2,000 years ago. They had already worked out the thing that every science paper since has kept confirming. If the body is not asked, the body fades, and that is the entire discovery. It is much older than any fitness industry. Your body does not maintain what it is not asked for. It is running a ruthless economy. Muscle is metabolically expensive. Bone is expensive. Your body will not keep paying rent on capacity you never use. Stop asking. And it quietly sells the equipment. There is one more twist here that catches most people out. When the daily energy burn of those Tanzanian hunter-gatherers was measured, everyone expected an enormous number. 2 hours of hard activity a day, kilometers of walking, all that digging. The result came back almost identical to an office worker in Chicago. The body adapts. It trims the energy it spends elsewhere to pay for the movement, which means the reason to move was never really about burning calories. It is about what the movement builds while you do it. Bone, vessel walls, insulin sensitivity, balance, a heart that still works at 80. So come back to the original question. Did ancient humans work out? Almost none of them did. Almost none of them ever needed to. For roughly 300,000 years, the exercise was baked so deeply into the day that pulling it out as a separate scheduled activity would have made no sense at all. You would have been the strange one, doing pointless squats by the fire while everyone else walked out to get food. Exercise as a concept only exists because we removed movement from life so completely that we had to schedule it back in. And we did not remove it recently. We have been removing it for 10,000 years, one convenience at a time. The plow, the wheel, the mill, the horse, the cart, the engine, the lift, the screen, every single one of them was a good idea. Every single one of them took a small withdrawal out of your body's account, which is why the modern advice, once you strip the marketing off it, is not really about fitness at all. It is about restoring a baseline that used to be automatic. 10,000 steps, by the way, was never a scientific finding. It came from the brand name of a Japanese pedometer sold in the 1960s, chosen partly because the character for 10,000 looks like a walking man. The number is advertising. The direction is right. Here's what actually maps onto the ancestral pattern, and almost none of it requires a gym. Walk further than feels necessary, over uneven ground, most days. Carry things. Real weight, awkward shapes, in your hands instead of on wheels. Get down onto the floor, squat, kneel, sit cross-legged, and stand back up without using your hands. Several times a day. For the rest of your life, break up the sitting, not with 1 hour at 6 in the evening, but with 2 minutes every half hour. Vary it. Never let your body memorize a single motion, and keep doing all of it when you're old. Because in every one of those populations, the 70-year-olds are still walking out to forage, and their bodies stay useful precisely because they are still being used. There is one last detail that says everything. Those groups have no word for exercise. They also have no word for retirement. The two absences are the same absence. Nobody in the Stone Age ever went to the gym. They never needed one, because their entire world was the gym. And they walked through its doors the moment they opened their eyes. You were born with the same equipment, the same arches, the same tendons, the same 4 million sweat glands, the same skeleton, still waiting to be told what it should become. The only thing you lost was the reason to use it. So now you have to invent one. That is all a workout has ever been.